Matt Hardy responds to the Jim Cornette social media controversy this week on his podcast. Jushin Thunder Liger has confirmed that he's going to be a surprise guest this weekend for the Owen Hart Foundation Men's Tournament's finals in Calgary, Alberta, Canada on AEW Collision on Saturday night. Mark Briscoe is out of the Death Before Dishonor World Championship main event against Claudio Castagnoli after suffering an injury. He's likely going to have to undergo surgery. Details on that. Plus, Dave Meltzer has compared Jon Moxley to Terry Funk and Dusty Rhodes. We'll let you know about that comparison. A Ring of Honor Television Championship tournament has been announced. Kenny Omega responds to the criticisms of the Tiger Driver 91 spot at Forbidden Door, and Mike Bennett opens up on Tony Khan's reaction to his constant bleeding in Ring of Honor. Hey guys, welcome back to Wrestling News 365. Hope everyone is doing very well. As always, there are plenty of news stories to get into in the world of All Elite Wrestling. Let's start off talking about Matt Hardy and Jim Cornette. One of the biggest stories this week, one of the bigger social media controversies regarding the back and forth between Matt Hardy, Jim Cornette, and Cornette's podcast co-host Brian Last on social media. Lots of people have let their thoughts and opinions known on this, and Matt Hardy is now on his podcast opened up on the back and forth and his reaction to it and his thoughts about Cornette and his podcast co-host as well. Following Matt Hardy's recent back and forth with Jim Cornette and his podcast co-host Brian Last, the AEW star has reflected on the exchange by questioning the actions of both men. Talking on his own podcast, The Extreme Life of Matt Hardy, Hardy took aim at Cornette and Last for the manner at which they came at him during the exchange and also comparing the differences he sees in their podcasts. Hardy said, quote, "Even if you have an issue or a problem with someone, there is a way to address those things without insulting them or biting their head off. That's what's very important, and that's obviously what kind of started this instance this week with me. I don't want to be a podcast that says negative things about people. Like, I don't want to be a podcast that wishes injury upon other wrestlers that I don't like or bad things upon wrestlers that I don't like. I want to be a positive, productive, inspirational podcast." Despite the recent exchange, Hardy's problem with Cornette actually dates back to 3 years ago at Double or Nothing 2020, when Hardy teamed with the Elite to take on Chris Jericho's Inner Circle faction in a Stadium Stampede match. Cornette, who is known for his traditionalist views on wrestling, was not a fan of the match to say the least, so much so that he could no longer be friends with either Hardy or Jericho simply for their involvement in the match. This was something that rubbed Hardy the wrong way, changing his perspective on the legendary manager. He continued, quote, "We did that Stadium Stampede over the course of the night before, and they edited it all morning and they worked on it. Jim Cornette had the audacity to say because Matt Hardy and Chris Jericho were involved in the Stadium Stampede match, I can no longer be their friend." Interesting. I can no longer be their friend because they're in a wrestling match. I'm their friend and I like them as human beings, and I thought they both had a potential and I wanted to see them excel and do well in pro wrestling, but now because they're doing a pro wrestling match that isn't my cup of tea, I can no longer be friends with them? Is this real life? Who says that? Who thinks like that? Now, Hardy's involvement in the Stadium Stampede came as one of his first in AEW, taking place during the COVID-19 pandemic, of course. While Hardy has fond memories of the match, he recently reflected on his early days with the company and what character changes he wishes he made at the time. Of course, he started off as Broken Matt Hardy, then transitioning into Big Money Matt as well. So, what are your thoughts on the latest development between Hardy and Cornette? I'm sure Jim Cornette eventually will have his say in a much longer form on his podcast, the Jim Cornette Experience or Jim Cornette's Drive-Thru as well. But now, a few days on, what are your thoughts on the matter? Who do you think won that argument? Who's in the right? Who's in the wrong? Do you side with Matt Hardy? Do you side with Jim Cornette? Or are you somewhere in the middle? What are your thoughts? As always, let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. I'm really interested to know your thoughts and opinions on this because it got a lot of people talking earlier this week. Now let's talk about AEW Collision this Saturday. Of course, tomorrow, the finals of the Owen Hart Foundation Men's and Women's Tournament is going to be taking place in Owen Hart's hometown of Calgary, Alberta, Canada as well. And a special guest has seemingly announced his impending appearance on this week's AEW Collision to the surprise of many wrestling fans. Despite not yet being announced via AEW, Japanese wrestling icon and WWE Hall of Famer Jushin Thunder Liger has let the cat out the bag, informing fans on Twitter that he is bound for the Owen Hart Foundation Tournament finals in Calgary, Alberta, Canada. Liger tweeted, quote, "I'm at Haneda Airport now. From now on, I will go to Calgary, Canada via San Francisco. I was invited as a guest at Owen Hart's Memorial Tournament. I'm looking forward to Calgary after a long time." Of course, it isn't too much of a surprise because AEW President Tony Khan commented a few months ago that he'd have loved to have Liger present, and it looks like that's going to be the case. While it's unclear what capacity Liger will be involved, his appearance is fitting due to his shared history with Hart dating back to New Japan Pro Wrestling in the early 90s. The final for the men's tournament will see CM Punk take on Absolute Ricky Starks, whilst on the women's side, 2022 finalist Ruby Soho will face off against the winner of Athena versus Willow Nightingale, which airs tonight on Rampage, that being on July 14. Elsewhere on the card for Collision, the AEW World Tag Team titles are on the line as FTR defend against Bullet Club Gold's Jay White and Juice Robinson in a 2 out of 3 falls match. With news of AEW's impending numerous restrictions on talent via banned moves and moves that require clearance ahead of time from medical, production and coaches, it's going to be very interesting to see what effects the changes have on the in-ring action going forward on AEW television. And let's talk a little bit about Ring of Honor, because we had been previously told, it had been announced that Mark Briscoe would be challenging for the Ring of Honor World Championship against Claudio Castagnoli at the upcoming Ring of Honor Death Before Dishonor pay-per-view, but now that is no longer the case. Because Tony Khan has indeed confirmed that Briscoe will be out of the match due to injury. With the planned main event for Ring of Honor Death Before Dishonor scrapped due to injury, the details are not currently known. Per Tony Khan, Mark Briscoe is currently injured and unable to be medically cleared to compete at Ring of Honor's upcoming pay-per-view Death Before Dishonor. Khan wrote on Twitter, quote, "Due to an injury reported this week, Mark Briscoe cannot be cleared to wrestle at Ring of Honor Death Before Dishonor next Friday on July 21st. We wish Briscoe the very best in his recovery." Ring of Honor World Champion Claudio Castagnoli is on training sabbatical to prepare for the huge week ahead with Blood and Guts on Wednesday at AEW Dynamite and his championship defense at Death Before Dishonor pay-per-view next Friday. We will address Claudio's pay-per-view title challenger this week following the highly anticipated Blood and Guts event on TBS. Again, everyone at AEW and Ring of Honor is wishing Mark Briscoe the very best in his injury recovery. Thank you all. Now, it was actually a bit more of an update and more details were given about this regarding Mark Briscoe's injury. This came from Sean Ross Sapp of Fightful. Those close to Mark Briscoe have confirmed that he suffered a, quote, serious knee injury that will likely require surgery. Though they didn't say the specifics of the injury, just that it was serious and in all likelihood, he would have to undergo the knife. The main event for Death Before Dishonor was originally announced as Ring of Honor World Champion Claudio Castagnoli taking on Mark Briscoe after Briscoe was encouraged to challenge Claudio by Eddie Kingston. Of course, we wish Briscoe the best in his recovery and hopefully he can come back soon. As far as who will challenge Claudio Castagnoli at the pay-per-view, once we get confirmation on that, we'll let you know. If we hear any rumors or rumblings, we'll let you know. But as of right now, his opponent for next week's event is currently unknown. Jon Moxley, is he a bit like Terry Funk and Dusty Rhodes? Well, Dave Meltzer says maybe he is. Jon Moxley has become an ace-like figure ever since he arrived in All Elite Wrestling back at Double or Nothing in 2019. To get to that point, the three-time AEW World Champion has utilized a unique style that prioritizes realism, as he explained in his recent thesis regarding blood in professional wrestling. While his philosophy regarding our great sport is sometimes controversial, Dave Meltzer believes that Moxley's views fall in line with some of wrestling's most legendary stars of the 20th century. Speaking on a recent episode of Wrestling Observer Radio, Meltzer complimented Moxley's commitment to realism in his matches. Quote, "He looks at it as if it's real. If it was real, like in an MMA card, there's a bunch of people bleeding in every single MMA card." Meltzer concurred before adding, "So in his mind, it's like that's what happens in a real fight." Meltzer then noted he doesn't personally agree with Moxley's belief regarding blood, though he does understand his logic regarding the subject. Furthermore, Meltzer compared the Blackpool Combat Club members' thought process to wrestling legends of the past. Quote, "I mean, Abdullah the Butcher bled a lot, Terry Funk bled a lot," Meltzer reminded. He then pointed out that of all the guys, Moxley is the most Terry Funk of anyone in wrestling right now. Terry Funk and Dusty Rhodes bled like crazy week in and week out. That's what they did. Moxley's roughneck style and affinity for bleeding has also been seen across the world, most recently in his final death match against El Desperado at New Japan Strong Independence Day in Korakuen Hall. And Moxley's hardcore summer won't end there, as later this month he'll take his part in, of course, the second Blood and Guts match alongside the Blackpool Combat Club when they face off against the Elite in the Double Cage, that coming next Wednesday night on AEW Dynamite on TBS. So, do you agree with Meltzer's comparison of Moxley to Terry Funk and Dusty Rhodes, or in your mind, is that sacrilege? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section section below. Going back to Ring of Honor, a World Television Championship Eliminator tournament has been announced. We do know that Tony Khan does indeed love his tournaments. In All Elite Wrestling, the company currently has 3 concurrent tournaments going on at the same time, with the Owen Hart Foundation men and women's tournaments and the Blind Eliminator Tag Team Tournament. Now AEW President Tony Khan has added another tournament to his list of current ones. On the July 13 edition of Ring of Honor TV on Honor Club, commentary announced that the Ring of Honor TV title Eliminator Tournament to determine the #1 contender for Samoa Joe's Ring of Honor World Television Championship at Death Before Dishonor on July 21st. The tournament will consist of 4 competitors with 2 former champions in the field. It will be Dalton Castle versus Tony Nese and Shane Taylor versus Sean Dean. In the first matchup, Castle defeated Nese and then Taylor defeated Dean to advance to the finals, which will take place on the July 20 edition, just 1 day before Death Before Dishonor on pay-per-view. The tournament winner versus Samoa Joe will join Claudio Castagnoli versus an unnamed opponent for the Ring of Honor World Championship on the lineup for next Friday's pay-per-view. As we find out more matches, of course, we'll let you know on future videos. Now, it was a while ago now that Will Ospreay defeated Kenny Omega at Forbidden Door for the IWGP United States Heavyweight Championship, but people are still talking about it, specifically that Tiger Driver 91 spot. As I mentioned, at Forbidden Door, Will Ospreay defeated Kenny Omega to win the IWGP United States Heavyweight Championship. During the course of the near 40-minute bout, both men put their bodies on the line in a battle that saw many breathtaking and devastating moments, including Ospreay dropping Omega on his head, with the Tiger Driver 91 now dubbed the Storm Driver 93. This move had fans and critics talking about if it was too dangerous or reckless in the aftermath of the event. Speaking with Justin Barrasso of Sports Illustrated, Kenny Omega addressed the critics of the use of the move. He said, quote, "There are a lot of people criticizing who don't have my best interests at heart. They just want to put a dark match on that match, which is a performance I'm extremely proud of, and performances like that will be few and far between as I get older and older." Omega continued on to provide insight to why the Tiger Driver 91 was so valuable to the closing stretch of the match, saying, quotes, "In terms of a live and physical performance, I've never seen anything more mind-blowing skill-wise, performance-wise, productions-wise than Cirque du Soleil. To me, that's the peak form of that style of entertainment. As I watch these shows and their stunts and their compositions for every scene, it's rare for me to go, that looks easy, I could do that. But there are certainly times when I watch what they do and know this is their identity, and that is the reason why they're on that stage. During the high-flying acrobatics or seamlessly strung-together choreography, I never go, how stupid is this guy? If he falls, he's dead. We'd be dead if we tried that. But here's the thing, we're not them. We'll never be them. We weren't meant to be them." Addressing his critics and mentioning Mike Tyson as a comparison to how confident he is in his abilities inside the ring, Omega stated, quote, "Don't tell me not to wrestle the way I know how to wrestle. Is there a risk? Was there a risk when Mike Tyson was fighting within inches of space between other championship level boxer throwing power punches? Of course. But Tyson was confident in his abilities, and he knew he was the best. So don't tell Mike Tyson how to box. Don't tell Tyson Smith how to wrestle. You aren't even close to being qualified. Just shut the F up." Now, Omega has already been back in the squared circle with a victory over Wheeler Yuta on the July 5th edition of AEW Dynamite. He will now take place in the Blood and Guts match on the July 19 episode. Of course, Omega will team up with fellow Golden Elite members Hangman Adam Page, the Young Bucks, and the debuting Kota Ibushi to face the Blackpool Combat Club's John Moxley, Wheeler Yuta, Claudio Castagnoli, Konosuke Takeshita, and the returning Pac as well. So what do you think about Omega addressing his critics, and specifically the critics of that spot? Finally, Mike Bennett has opened up on Tony Khan's reaction to him bleeding a lot on Ring of Honor television. Appearing on AEW Unrestricted, Mike Bennett of the Kingdom revealed how he's inadvertently become Ring of Honor's answer to John Moxley. Bennett would discuss his conversation with Ring of Honor owner and AEW CEO Tony Khan, saying, quote, "After I got the staples, I came to the back and Tony was like, 'Does Universal Studios just make you bleed? Is that what happens?' And I was like, 'I guess so.' And he's like, 'There must just be something about this place that brings it out of you.' And I was like, 'Yeah, I think so.' Khan isn't the only one who has noticed Bennett's bleeding, as he would go on to say, not to get too deep again, but actually someone asked me, they were like, 'Why does it seem like you've been bleeding so much in your matches?' Actually, I laughed about it, but when I take a step back, I thought about it, I was like, yeah, I have, and I wonder why. Anyone who's kind of followed my journey over the last 5 or 6 years through my sobriety, they've realized, or at least I have realized, that the Mike Bennett of the past was always holding back just a little bit. There was always that little bit of judgment in his head where I was saying, I want to wrestle this way, I want to go full force into this, but what if my peers think differently of me? Or what if my veterans who I respect don't respect what I'm doing? Just those little voices in our head saying, this is what you do, but we're going to let everyone else's opinions pull you away from what you actually want to do. he was going to address the change in his mindset, saying, quote, "And what happened when I got fired from WWE and then I found in my journey through sobriety was I started saying to myself, I'm just going to wrestle the way I want to wrestle. I did this because it was supposed to be fun. And if I'm not having fun, what's the point of it? And when I have the most fun, it's when I throw myself into a match, when I say I'm not afraid, I'm not going to worry about judgment, I'm just going to go full force, whatever it takes, because that's how I want to wrestle." So do you agree with what Mike Bennett is saying there? And have you noticed he's been bleeding a lot? Let me know your opinions on that. But there you go, guys. It's the latest AEW/Ring of Honor news for you. Be sure to smash a like on the like button. Be sure to subscribe, bottom right-hand corner. As always, let me know your thoughts in the comment section below, and I'll speak to you again very, very soon. Hey guys, thank you for watching, listening, streaming, or however you come across this video today. Be sure to click on the video on the right there to watch our next video, or click the bottom there to subscribe, or the bottom right-hand corner. Thank you very much, and I'll speak to you again very soon.